System Board of Regents Policy and Planning Committee meeting to order. I would like to ask Ms. Stegall, parliamentarian, to please call the roll.
Chair Hamilton,
Yes.
Vice Chair Stevens,
Present.
Secretary Whitten,
Present.
Regent Hall, Regent Jones, Regent Powers,
Here.
Regent Sutherland.
Here.
We have quorum.
Alrighty. We need to approve the meeting minutes from the May 12th, 2026. Are there any corrections or meeting minutes to the meeting minutes?
Chair Hamilton, I would move to approve.
I'm sorry?
I would move to approve.
Okay, thank you.
Motion by Secretary Whitten. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Stevens. Is there any objection to the motion to approve the minutes? Hearing none, the motion passes by consensus.
Alrighty, General Counsel Jessica Stegall, will you please walk us through the agenda items?
Yes, so at the September board meeting, we are going to have additional Board of Regents policy changes as well as bylaw changes come before you all as a result of 619. The first one is Board of Regents Procedure 1.2-P. This change transfers an administrative policy to a Board of Regents procedure to reflect the board's authority to approve college mission statements. This change was made as a result of 619. Previously, prior to 619, the College Board of Directors were involved in this process, as well as the Board of Regents, but that has changed with 619, as well as SAC-COC requirements. As a result, once the board approves that procedure change, Administrative Policy 1.2-1, which refers to the previous policy, will be archived with your all's approval. Any questions about that procedure change? All right, the next, I'm going to walk you all through the bylaws. We provided with your information a red-lined document. I'm going to scroll down. What we most did this time is, again, clarified language and made sure statutory references were included throughout. We deleted out the mission from the bylaws just as redundant and unnecessary. The next change was creation of item K. This was previously included in item J. We just spelled it out more clearly in reference to the statutory language from KRS 164.360. The next change comes under board composition. We clarified our transition language to reference the October 1, 2026 date, which is when we will have our new board of 17 regents. We also included under section E, subsection 3, individual regents may be removed at the request of the president or board chair after a regent has failed to attend 3 consecutive regularly scheduled meetings, which shall be considered gross neglect of duty pursuant to KRS 63.080, subsection 2, subsection D. This was a statutory change from 619 that was included, so that's why we had to include that in the bylaws. The next change comes under section 4, board committees. Again, added some clarifying language. And then right before subsection C, included during the transition period associated with the implementation of House Bill 619, the provisions of these bylaws relating to the board committee shall be implemented and applied to the fullest extent practicable, consistent with applicable law and reconstitution of the board. Next change with C, we added the Finance and Facilities Committee. Dr. Quarles mentioned to you all during the June Board of Regents meeting that we would be creating a Finance and Facilities Committee, so that is included here. Section D, we reworded the role of the Executive Committee. Their duties have not changed, but just clarified some language regarding their role. Included in here, as has been our practice, that all members of the board are invited to attend the meeting, but will not count toward quorum or have the authority to vote on matters that come before the Executive Committee. Added some clarifying language under the Policy and Planning Committee, but again, the roles and responsibilities of this committee do not change. And added some clarifying language under the Audit Committee. The biggest change to the committee structure is the creation of the Finance and Facilities Committee. That is subsection G. You all can see that there on your screen. It's kind of small, so it's also included in your materials. I'm not going to read it word by word to you all because there's a lot on that screen, but I encourage you, if you haven't already, to please review it as it will be brought before you all for adoption at the September Board of Regents meeting. But to give a high-level overview, the Finance and Facilities Committee will hear information regarding the financial stability and sustainability of KCTCS, the allocation and investment of financial resources, proposed annual operating and capital budget, KCTCS's financial performance, significant financial and business transactions that require board approval, and the acquisition, disposition, leasing, development, construction, renovation, maintenance, and management of real property as required by the Kentucky Revised Statutes. So most of what you hear in Todd's report at the board meeting will flow through the Finance Committee with the creation of this committee. Any question about the Finance and Facilities Committee? Regent Whitten?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I wonder if we could kind of get, I feel like we're expanding this because we're expanding the members of the board, right? For so long, we've only had policy planning and the audit committee. So I wonder if we could get a justification for this new committee because it seems like there is some overlap.
So the discussion regarding the creation of the Finance and Facilities Committee was in an effort for actual discussion regarding these items like the budget, capital resources, real property, acquisition, disposition of property to occur at the committee level. We really encourage board members to review materials in advance of committee meetings and to discuss and really provide feedback at the committee meetings, and then in an effort to make board meetings run more efficiently, have a consent agenda report out from each committee. And of course, if there's any board member that wanted to discuss any item from any committee further, an item could always be pulled from the consent agenda. But also with the change of having real property come through the board, and you all saw this at the June Board of Regents meeting, I think there were 16 real property individual items that took up a large chunk of time and kind of interrupted the flow of the board meeting. Those would flow through the Finance Committee as one consent agenda item for the board to approve. And again, if there was any particular acquisition or disposition that the board wanted to discuss further at the full board meeting, they could absolutely pull that item for full board discussion. But the effort is really to operate more efficiently and more align us with modern board structure. We're going to have an AGB training before the December Board of Regents meeting, and the AGB trainer is going to walk us through this process of how to optimize the role of our boards and the work that you all do, because you all do great, meaningful work. And so just helping it streamline, again, with the addition of the new board members.
And if you don't mind, just an additional comment, this is a committee that I know that Vice Chair Stevens has been advocating for years, but also the fact that we are doing a robust facilities review that continues to ongo, but this committee can also help inform me and our staff for strategic ask towards the Kentucky General Assembly. There's always a lot of deferred maintenance, competing projects across the system, but it also allows us to have a little bit more oversight with the 350 plus buildings that we manage.
Thank you, Dr. Qualls. I know that this is one of the situations that I may not have to ask you this every time, but almost every time we talk, I ask you about facilities and how we're cutting back. So I appreciate you adding or encouraging that committee. And it is, as we've talked about before, the big expenses we have are personnel and facilities. And so I hope with this is we're able to get a better handle on expenditures and improving our campuses. Thank you again, and Dr. Qualls.
And thank you, Chair Hamilton, who approved this as well.
Just one more question, if you don't mind. So this is going to require the chair of the board to really be present on all of these committees, right? And this is going to add an additional responsibility level, if I'm reading this correctly, right? On item 2.
Correct.
Yeah, so this is going to add another committee commitment for the chair of the Board of Regents. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the Finance and Facilities Committee? All right, I'll move on to the next section under Article 4 board meetings. There's some cleanup language under special meetings of the board. Nothing new there, just clarifying. The next item is item G. As you all are aware, it's been our practice to have a period of open comment at board meetings, but that's never been codified in our bylaws. In an effort to streamline that process and allow the chair and the board liaison and Dr. Quarles to plan the agenda, we have included language that any individual wishing to address the Board of Regents must submit a written request to the board liaison no later than 7 calendar days in advance. Then the chair and the KCTCS president will review the request and determine whether or not it is approved. This, again, is a way to codify that process, allow us to plan, make any arrangements that we may need to make in terms of that open comment period. The same amount of time will be allotted, 3 minutes for them to address the board. As has been our practice, the board does not engage or respond, but individuals can come and have that 3 minutes. This is also the practice that other institutions use for open comment. Any questions about this section? Yes, Regent Whitten.
Sorry, they're always going to come from me. So one of the things I have a concern with is, so it says the requests, of course, are going to go to the board chair and the president, right? And or board liaison. So at that point, though, my concern is that request could be denied. Is that correct? It doesn't say that. Or is it going to say all requests to speak publicly at meetings are to be granted? It says neither of the two. So does that need to be codified in that policy somewhere?
I mean, I think that's at the discretion of the board chair and the president. Theoretically, if the agenda is such that there's not enough time to allow for the period, or if it's about something that is not on the agenda and the board and the president in consultation determine that the request should be denied, then they'll have the authority to do that.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I guess my thoughts just kind of go back to, many, many years past. And I don't obviously anticipate anything like this happening again, but I remember the great tenure debate, right? If we remember when a lot of faculty showed up at a board meeting to express their concerns. And so my worry would be, without actually saying that all these requests will just automatically be granted as long as they have something to do with the agenda or open time, that those requests could be denied, and faculty voice, staff voice, public stakeholders, they could be denied based on that. So, I mean, I guess that's just my concern. I just want to make sure that that would not happen, I guess, is what I'm asking here. Maybe some assurance.
Any other questions or comments about this section?
That we're used to running an open and transparent administration. So thank you for bringing that up.
All right, the final change to this is included on what page am I on? 6. And it is under section 5, manner of participation, subsection B. And this is just, and this will be in place starting hopefully we'll start to work on it with the December meeting. But members shall state their name before making or seconding a motion to ensure accurate record keeping for the minutes. As you all know, sometimes it can be complicated when we have board members, both in person and virtual, to accurately reflect who's making the motion and the second. I do my best to try and identify who it is, but I know I've made mistakes before, and sometimes you all are really eager and multiple regions jump to make a motion or a second at the same time. So this is just something we've added in there to make sure we have proper record keeping. And again, this will be something we'll be working to implement moving forward. So if you were to make a motion or a second moving forward, starting with the December meeting, we would ask that the regent state their name when they make that motion or that second. Any question about that addition? All right, there's only one other change under section 4, and that's just adding clarifying language. Again, this will come back before you all at the September Board of Regents meeting, but any other questions or comments about the bylaws changes? All right, that concludes that section. Chair Hamilton, if you'd like, I can go ahead and provide the 619 implementation update.
Yes, please.
As you all can see in your materials, we included a chart of the implementation timeline. This is an expansion of what you all received via email. You can see what we have completed thus far, as well as the remaining items to be completed. The items that I just went over, the policy 1.2-P and the changes to the Board of Regents bylaws, which will be presented to you all for adoption at the September 10th Board of Regents meeting. And then on October 1, we will have our newly constituted board. So we are rapidly approaching the end of our 619 implementation timeline. But any questions on the implementation timeline? All right, Chair Hamilton, that concludes my report.
All righty.
Hold on 1 second. I think we skipped over the 490.
Oh, correct. Thank you.
Policy.
I'm actually going to ask Bridget to go over this 490 policy change. Thank you, Shannon.
Health insurance, I think. Okay.
So House Bill 490 actually made an amendment to KRS 164.360, which specifically has to do for our perspectives with KCTCS employee separation. So Board Policy 2.8 is the employee separation policy, which goes into being able to separate an employee's employment but for cause, and then also not for cause. But then it also talks about financial exit. I cannot say this word, you all. I have said it over and over again as slow as I possibly can. Financial exigency. So the updates to Board Policy 2.8 implements the new language, the amendment that House Bill 490 put into place. That is there in your materials for you. We've also taken that board policy and put it into the new template and the new policy template that we're using for all of our policies moving forward as we review those as well. The changes to this employee separation policy are to take effect October 1st. So this policy revision would come before the board at the September meeting as an action item for your all's approval at that time. I think just of note for all of you, we do not distinguish. So the Board 2.8 policy employee separation is for all KCTCS employees. And while House Bill 490 specifically talks a little bit more in depth about faculty and presidents, we do not differentiate in our board policies. Employee separation is for all employees, and all employees have an appealable right in that. The faculty looks a little bit different on the administrative policy side in that it goes through the Senate Appeals Committee. Staff have the complaint resolution policy on the administrative policy side. So that's the differentiation between the two in terms of the appeals process. But employee separation as a whole, we apply it to all KCTCS employees. Questions about revisions and changes to this policy?
Bridget, if you
Yeah.
don't mind, when I'm looking at this policy, and I mean, I feel like that this policy has kind of always existed in some
It
form,
has.
at least within the last decade. I mean, there's
Correct.
nothing really significant here that has changed.
Correct.
Correct. I mean, just for
Yeah.
every faculty
Yeah.
and staff member who might be listening, this policy has
Yeah.
already been in existence. It's just.
It
being
has
modified.
it has always been in existence, Regent, and the only thing, the update to the policy really is the specific language of 490 that talks about the bona fide financial reasons and those being listed out explicitly. That's the major change. And then again, just the formatting into the new template of the policies.
Great, thank you.
And for those paying attention, when this legislation is making its way through the General Assembly, we knew that it would not really affect us that much, but we need to codify it like the others are doing as well.
Correct. Okay, then I can, Chair Hamilton, if you all are ready, I can move into the health insurance update.
Please do.
Okay, so I'm going to do my best to keep this as high level, not down in the weeds and bore you all with a bunch of insurance talk. But at the same time, I think it's very important for the board to understand kind of what we have been doing behind the scenes and why. So just to give you a little bit of background, since KCTCS was formed, we have always participated in the state's health insurance program. So that is administered underneath the personnel cabinet, and it is the Department of Employee Insurance, otherwise referred to as DEI. We are one of only 2 public post-secondary institutions that now participate. So other than K-State, all of the other 4-year universities across the state of Kentucky are all on their own. They do not participate in DEI in the state's health insurance plan. Typically where you're going to see the majority of participants fall, your K-12 school districts, all participate underneath here, as well as all state employees. And then KCTCS is what we consider a quasi-state agency. And what that means to the state is we have the ability to participate in some of the state's benefits plans, but then there are those that we don't participate in. So we are not true state person in the true state personnel system, but we have access to some of their benefits plans, and their health insurance plan is one of those. So that gives us that designation as a quasi-state agency. DEI controls all aspects of the health insurance plan. So KCTCS has no ability to make any changes to the plan's designs themselves. We do not control what the total premium is for any of those plans. That is all done at the state level through the Department of Employee Insurance. KCTCS does, in terms of our role, we do have the ability to then set what that employer-employee cost sharing looks like. So how much are our employees going to pay per month of that total premium cost? That's the extent of I'm going to use the word control, so to speak, that we have with KCTCS. The design, all of those sorts of things of the plan are handled at the state level. When the forensic audit was done, and some of you may recall, there was a portion of the forensic audit that one of the recommendations specifically said that we, KCTCS, needed to consider performing a detailed analysis of our health insurance providers to determine their selection of insurance plans. So we started this review because it was the first time, honestly, since KCTCS had been created, that we really took a deep dive into our benefits plans. So we started with the retiree health insurance plan. We did that and completed that, and those changes were done and put into place January 1 of 26. We went with a different vendor that actually has saved a good deal of premiums for our retirees. And then at the same time, we said, it's never been done. So since we started as a system, we have never looked at what is our health insurance actually costing us as a system. What does our claims experience look like? We've never had access to that data or been able to look at it. So Oh, sorry, Marty. I see you pointed. I wasn't sure if you were asking a question. So we've never actually looked at that, had the opportunity to look at that. So we had utilized Aon Consulting to do the review of the retiree health insurance plan, and we're able to utilize that same contract to then have them look at what our plan participation, claims experience, all of those sorts of things look like for our active employees. So they started that work in January of 26. So much of what you're going to see in the upcoming slides is both historical, and then it is a lot of some of the information that Aon was able to garner from claims experience and data they've gotten from the state, and then to be able to help us in making some recommendations of what we might want to consider moving forward for KCTCS. So this just gives you a little bit of an idea of what has happened as it relates to the premiums, that the total cost in terms of premiums for two of the most significant plan choices that our employees have. So there are 4 different health insurance plans that our employees have the option of choosing from underneath the state's insurance plan. Primarily, only 2 of these plans are where about 95 or higher % of our employees fall, and that's the Living Well CDHP plan and then the PPO plan. So both of those are listed here, and this just gives you an idea of what those total premium increases have looked like over the past 5 to 6 years. And so it has increased significantly. So we went from 2020 to 2021, it was a 3% increase. To this past year for the CDHP plan, it was a 16% increase. The PPO looked very similarly, has gone from 3% back 20 to 21 to 14% this most recent 2026 plan year. The total average for all of those, and you remember us probably talking about this back in the fall, is KCTCS experienced an increase of 18%, which was roughly $8 million increase in our premiums for health insurance for 2026. So that was a significant impact to our budget. In addition to that, KCTCS also pays an administrative fee to the Department of Employee Insurance, and that's what's represented in the chart on my right, on your right. And so that is $8 per month per participant. So that's an additional. So on average in 2026, we're going to be seeing an increase. We'll be paying of a close to $10 million, a little over $10 million for that increase, plus that administrative fee that we're paying to DEI to be a participant in that state insurance plan. So that just gives you an idea of some of the costs that we're looking at. Next slide, please. This just gives you a context. I don't think it's for all of us that have insurance. We know it's like everything else, right? It is all just continues to go up. So this slide is a slide from Aon that just gives a little bit of a snapshot look at what the trends have been across the United States of what the healthcare environment looks like for the past 20 years. So the big and most significant increase, and not a surprise probably to anyone, that is impacting healthcare costs is that pharmacy. So our pharmaceuticals it's about 13 to 15%, but it's actually a 30% of the total cost of healthcare increases for the projected for 2027. So things like the GLP-1s have had a significant impact in the pharmaceutical world on claims experience. So that is not surprising. Policy and regulations have also increased as part of that increase. So there's a lot of different factors, and this just kind of gives you an idea that it continues to climb. It's not expected to not climb. So we just know that there are all of these different drivers that are putting lots of pressure on the healthcare environment. Next slide. So specifically for us, for KCTCS, so like I said before, for 2026, we saw an 18% increase in our total expense for our health insurance. Much of that was based upon these factors here. So like I said, the GLP-1 weight loss medication was a significant significant driver. We have seen significantly more high cost claimants, so claims over $250,000. There has been policy and laws that have been put into place that impact things like dispensing fees for pharmacies, which is then increasing costs to plans. So all of those things, if they are not managed, and you really have to proactively manage much of those things, it's just not sustainable for us to not think about seeing these increases continue. They're just going to continue if you can't put some management around those. Next slide. This specifically, this site, I know it's kind of small to see, but this is KCTCS's demographic information. So as of when Aon was doing this analysis, we had 3,447 enrolled active employees, participants. 2.8% of our employee population waives our coverage, probably because they have coverage with elsewhere with a spouse. 60% are female, 40% are male. The average age of our participants was 48, and the average annual salary was $58,000. It breaks it down farther in terms of, do they have single coverage, family coverage? That's represented on there. It also shows you, you can see that the majority of all of our employees are in that CDHP plan, then followed by the PPO plan. The other two plans that the state offers have very little participation from our employees. And then it breaks it down too in terms of the different generations that are covered and what percentage of our participants fall within which generation. Some key takeaways for that and why that's important and why Aon focused on that and looked at that is, when you think about the different generations, they have different priorities and things that are important to them. So whereas, baby boomers might want their policies and their health insurance to look a certain way because there are things that are important to them, it may not look the same. And Gen Z might not care about the same types of things in terms of a plan design or wellness benefits, those sorts of things. We don't have the ability to tailor any of our plan makeup or wellness benefits or wellness initiatives to our specific KCTCS population because we are in the state's plan and we are lumped in with all other state employees that participate in the plan. Next slide. So when we really started looking at this and talking about this and talking with Aon and with Dr. Quarles and leadership, the question that kept coming up is participation in the state's plan the best option for KCTCS? Is there other alternatives out there? Does it make sense for us to continue to participate, or should we think about or consider a self-insured health insurance plan? Where we would come out from underneath the state system and KCTCS would on its own manage and design its own health insurance plans. So that is really what we tasked Aon with doing is, okay, look at all of our claims experience, look at the trends, everything that is happening, and give us your best recommendation of what makes the most sense for KCTCS for us to consider. Next slide. So this slide right here is where we have spent and how much we have spent, KCTCS has spent. So in 2026, the employer plus employee spend. So that is everything from what our claims experience has been to what our premiums costs have been. So in 2026, with our current enrollment, that 3446 number, we will expend just over $62 million in health insurance, which also includes your prescription drug insurance. It includes the administrative fees, those sorts of things. Projected for 2027, when Aon did the projection and they kept the enrollment exactly the same, and we told them that we wanted them to do the projections as though we didn't change a single thing as it relates to the plan designs. So take the plans that we currently have underneath the state's benefits system and just transfer them over as though we were going to be self-insured, but we were going to have the exact same plan options, cover things at the exact same levels. What would that look like for us? So their projection is that then for 2027, our spend would increase by just shy of $6 million, so $5.7 million, which would be a 9.2% increase. So the thing to keep in mind of that $67.8 million is that roughly about 10% of that is $6.2 million is the actual employee contributions. So if you take that off, what's remaining truly are actual expenses is being expensed to KCTCS's budgets and hitting our budget. That 9.2% increase, when they did that analysis and that recommendation, they are saying that that 9.2% increase would be both medical pharmacy claims experience. We would be required to have stop loss insurance. So what that is if you have a high dollar claim that once it hits a certain threshold, then it goes to stop loss insurance. So it's no longer actually hitting our budget. That stop loss insurance carrier then picks up the claims experience after it hits that limit. So you have to pay an insurance company for that type of coverage. It includes different potential supports that we would have to have. So we would need to probably contract, we would need to contract with an actuarial service such as, for example, Aon, with the work that Aon did for us with this particular study, that they would be then doing and helping us on the experience side to know, would we need to make changes to plan designs? What should our premiums look like? That sort of thing, and provide those sorts of recommendations. There would be more compliance with HIPAA processes and procedures that would have to be put into place. So that 9.2% increase is all of those things put in place, not making any changes whatsoever to design at all. We would be looking at a potential 9.2% increase in what our 2026 costs are projected to come out. Next slide. But there are things that we can do. So even though with that 9.2%, if we were to go and become self-insured, because we then have the ability to make changes and control aspects of the plan that we do not currently have, there are things that we would be able to potentially look at doing. So for example, if we said that we wanted to put some limitations or restrictions around GLP-1 medications, that has the potential, if we said altogether we were going to just eliminate it and say we were only covering GLP-1s if it was specifically for someone with a diabetic diagnosis, eliminating that could potentially reduce that 9% increase by 5.5%, because that's how much the impact that those claims are having right now on our expense line. We also can look at things like direct-to-consumer products, so HRAs, so utilizing health reimbursement accounts for different things as it relates to GLP-1s. So some plan designs say, all right, we will put in an HRA $200 or $300 a year, and that money is there for you to be able to utilize for GLP-1, but we're not actually covering GLP-1 through our normal prescription drug benefits. So there are things like that we would be able to do. We would be able to utilize, so there is a Senate Bill 188 that has to do with dispensing fees for prescription drug medications that we believe we will be exempt from that. And that has the potential to have significant cost savings for us. In the event that we were to become self-insured. Again, you can do all sorts of things with plan designs. Yeah, Rayanne.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So with the Senate Bill 188, is
Mhm.
that does that limit the number, like the company that you would use? Like we would, okay. That's
It does
question.
not. It does not. So what Senate Bill 188 actually does is that every time you go to get a prescription filled, the pharmacy is allowed to charge a dispensing fee, but we would be exempt from that if we became self-insured, whereas the state's plan is not exempt. So
Okay.
those dispensing fees then become part of additional costs to our pharmacy benefits.
Thank you.
Yeah. We then ultimately we could, which we do now, but we can specifically change and alter if we wanted to, the different levels of, so right now where we have single coverage, family coverage, employee plus one, those are the things we can do different things with that in terms of strategy and modeling our plans. So that all of these types of things that are listed here on this are opportunities for us to have additional savings that would bring that 9.2% potential increase down even lower. Next slide. So again, I know this is kind of hard to see, but this is just to pros and cons it out for you all, to be able to see it side by side of what it looks like, the potential difference. Because I don't want anyone to think that there is not potential risk, so to speak, related with if we were to come out from the state's plan and become self-insured. And that is what's there on that con slide. So there is risk, so to speak, in terms of becoming fully insured, because we are now fully responsible, right, for all things. So if we do have significant, all of a sudden 1 year, we have some really high cost claimants, that those are claims that we will have to incur and be able to cover up to that stop loss layer, whatever we set that limit at. So that can cause some fluctuations. So not every month is it going to be a set dollar amount that gets charged to a budget. It's going to be, okay, the claims come in and we've got to be able to pay those claims. But that is where your premiums come into play, and setting up a reserve to be able to handle that as well. There are additional fiduciary responsibilities and compliance that, like I said, HIPAA before, that we will be subject to and will have to stay on top of. Their other con, so to speak, potentially is if we decided at a future date that, you know what, we're not sure that we don't want to get back into the state's health insurance plan, right? We tried this, but it didn't turn out the way that we wanted it to. We will have limited reentry options with KEHP. And so basically it is, right now, we don't participate in their flexible spending account. For example, we utilize our own third-party vendor to do that. We would have to take whatever it is that the state is offering. So we would lose that flexibility to be able to pick our own vendor for something else, should we at a later date want to come back in to the state system. But the pros of doing it, and I've used the word a lot as I've met with the presidents, and when we presented to the presidents, and Dr. Quarles and I and the leadership team have had conversations about this. You know, we've talked a lot about control, which sounds awful. I don't like that word a lot, but it really is what we have the opportunity to do if we were to become self-insured. We have the ability to control what our plans look like. We have the ability to tailor them to our employee demographic. So if we see that, you know, diabetes is a very high claims dollars for us as an organization, that we can tailor and design wellness benefits that specifically target diabetes type conditions. So we don't have that right now because we don't get that type of information. We don't have that level of detail from the state in terms of what our employee demographic and claims experience looks like. We have the ability to look at plan design. We have the ability to select our own vendors. So there's a lot of things in terms of, from a controlling costs standpoint, that we would be able to specifically couch to our employees and what our employee population claims experience looks like, that we do not have the ability to do right now underneath the state's plan. Any questions about any of this? Regent Whitten.
Yeah, Vice President Cantor, thank you so much. I mean, that's a lot of information. One of the questions I have, just kind of from jump, is you were talking earlier about how K-State and us, right, we're the only two who are kind of still hanging in there. So
Right.
when we look at the other, what would that be, Big Seven, I guess not Big Eight, Big Seven universities that are managing their own, did you find anything with them where they're like, gosh, I wish we would have, you know, stayed with KHP, KHP, or did they move on, or are they all happy? And also, it's similar in size of employees. I know obviously that's not quite the comparison when we're talking about the big guys like the University of Kentucky or Louisville. But is there anything else that you found, pros, cons, from maybe just listening to others?
Yeah, so we've had several conversations with lots of them, and most recently we talked with both EKU and WKU, which are not the big UKs, right? And WKU in more recent years has become self-insured, and honestly said to us it was the best decision that they ever made. And not because they don't still see, claims experience increase. They are subject to the same trends as what we see nationally and for ourselves, but they have been able to limit it. And they have said, yes, the jumping off point, so to speak, was a little overwhelming at first, just in terms of the getting it up off the ground and all those sorts of things, but that there was not a single thing that they had to say that, no, we wish we would have stayed or done something differently in that regard. EKU was the same way. They just feel more like they're controlling their own destiny, so to speak, because they are making the decisions that are having such a financial impact to their organizations. Regent Jones.
Hi there.
Hi.
So I did have a question about the ability to carve out the GLP-1s.
Mhm.
I know that you're saving that percentage off the top end, but realistically, I mean, we know that obesity, especially morbid obesity, causes the cardiovascular issues, heart disease, even certain types of cancers. How much would that really save you in the long run? Because if these GLP-1s are helping with those obesity issues, I mean, how does that level out?
Well, and that's a good question. And that is a question, honestly, that we have and that we have not been able to answer on, because we don't get that granular level of detail about our claims, where now we would if we were self-insured. So we would be able to look at and see, what are the actual diagnoses, right? Like, so are we seeing cardiovascular? Are we seeing diabetes? We don't get that information now, where we would have the ability to look at that and make modifications if it was so warranted. Regent Powers.
Yes. So did EKU or WKU, did they elaborate on like planned shared costs with their employees to see, how much that changed with the converting?
Yeah, so we do have Regent Powers a bunch. There is lots and lots and lots of data behind this presentation, I can assure you. So we do have, Aon was able to get from them a lot of different, it's hard for us to compare apples to apples though, because where we might say family coverage is employee plus a spouse plus at least one dependent, they may say family coverage is just an employee and a child. So we're not able to compare apples to apples per se, but our plan design in terms of our premiums, like the total premiums, aren't so far off. How we cost share is very different than what you will see with the majority of the 4 years. Regent Stevens. Oh, sorry, Regent Powers.
I was just going to say the only reason I ask is because it's a huge selling point, when you're in the recruitment process, try to, throw out their health insurance plans as low as $16.70 per month.
Right.
That's a big thing. And then, also we have the 5% of people that do cross-reference, which is not a lot, but
yeah. Agreed. Regent Stevens.
Yes, ma'am. I agree with Regent Powers. Is that I think the main thing is when we come up with saying this, we're going to have to sell that to the employees if this is the way we're going to go, and we're going to have as much employee input of what they see. But the ultimate decision is made upon you all's recommendation. But I just want to be sure that the employees, but if we're working toward this, have input in that situation. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, next slide. So ultimately, there is a KRS 164.2871, and that next slide actually has the language of that state statute. And it does give the governing board of each state post-secondary educational institution the authorization to provide a self-insured employer group health plan to its employees. So that is the reason why this is coming before you all as regents, is because you have the ability and the authority to give us that authorization to be able to proceed, should we choose to, after we thoroughly review all of the things, go to that self-insured route. And I think that's on the next slide. Yeah. So ultimately, the action item that we will be looking to bring before the board in September is, should KCTCS explore ceasing participation in the Kentucky Employee Health Insurance Plan and approve the establishment of a self-insured health insurance plan in accordance with state law for KCTCS employees that would be compliant with KRS 164.2871. Should the KCTCS president determine it is in the best interest of the institution to do so after a thorough review process. So assuming that I'm going to be even more proactive. So the next slide is assuming that we were to move forward, just to give you all kind of a timeline. And part of also the impetus of us really going in and digging into this review was, every year we get open enrollment starts in October, right? Well, our budget is set and goes into effect July 1. So in September, at some point, is typically when we find out from the Department of Employee Insurance what those premiums will look like for the next calendar year. So for this year, we will find out probably sometime late next month what we would be looking at come January 1. Well, our budget has already been established and long been put to bed in July. So there's not really that opportunity for us to be able to pivot. Like this year, when we saw all of a sudden an 18% increase, no one had budgeted for that. We didn't have the ability to be able to budget for that. The budget was already set and done. So part of the impetus, and as we thought about this, that the only way for this to make, not the only way, one of the main reasons of this making sense to us is for us to be able to align our health insurance costs and planning and strategy with our actual budget cycle. So if we were to move forward with becoming self-insured and leaving the state's plan, our plan as it stands right now would be that this would come before the board at the September board meeting. And then October through December, we would be doing all of the procurement things. So all of the RFPs, contracts, all of that sort of thing would be taking place October through December. January, we'll be able to say, okay, let's start talking about budget development, rates, all of those sorts of things, the communication of the new plan, whatever that looks like. It could be the exact same plans as what we have right now. If we did make any changes or tweaks or designs, all of that would be happening in February, March. Open enrollment would then happen in April or May, so that then July 1, we would start to operate our new health insurance plan on a fiscal year basis as opposed to a calendar year basis. So that way, as we go into budget planning, budget development, we know what our projected health insurance costs look like and can budget for those appropriately. So that's the very aggressive timeline that we are looking at right now. We've had lots of conversations with the consulting firm about this, that yes, this can be done. It will take a lot of boots on the ground, but we will be able to do it. It may be, depending, there's a lot of pieces that have to fall into place, but our first year, it may be that it's an 18-month plan year as opposed to, just a straight 12-month plan year, because you're going to have to start the year underneath the state's plan. In January through June, you'd have to still be under the state's plan, and then we would pick up underneath a new self-insured plan July 1. So there's different variables in that regard that we will have to, work through, but this is kind of what a timeline might look like should we proceed with making this move. Regent Stevens.
I have a question in reference to the administration of this.
Mhm.
Is this going to be, see, I'm trying to find the right word. Is a third party going to be the administrator of this? Or we're going to be select whether it be Blue Cross, Humana, United Health, ever what it is, this and that. Are we gonna have, and I know we'll have to pay a fee, but we're talking about, are we talking about a company like that? Or are we talking about your department's gonna handle everything? Thank you.
No, my department is certainly not going to handle everything.
Okay.
Yeah, no. So you will have a third party administrator that handles all of your health insurance claims. So right now, for example, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield is who is the state's health insurance provider. So you will put out an RFP, or we will have potentially the ability to piggyback onto existing state contracts, depending upon which way we go. But Anthem is just a big player in the market. Humana is another. Cigna is still out there. You know, there are different agencies, and so they would have to go through that process, and we would negotiate a contract with them, and they would handle that claims processing piece. You would also still you'd have a actuarial consultant piece that is doing the back end work of, once you're trying to establish from a budget cycle standpoint, okay, what do our claims experience look like? What are projections for next year? Making recommendations as to, all right, should you make changes because you have really high claims in this particular area? So let's make recommendations of options that you all could look at. So you will have that. All of those things are all factored into, though, that 9% increase that was on the slide previously. Regent Sutherland.
So should we make this decision in September, or should we wait? Because what if KHAP comes out and says, oh, there's a 1% increase?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, they may come out and say it's a 22% increase.
Correct.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just wondering,
Right.
should we make this decision after that, or what thoughts?
Right. So if you're asking Bridget's opinion, Bridget would say, don't wait. Because regardless of whether they say it's a 1% this year, it could be 30% next year. Right. And we still don't have the ability to control anything as it relates specifically to our plan, our employees. We are subject to whatever it is that the state decides. Coming out from underneath of it gives us that ability to make changes as we see that they need, those that make the most sense for our organization, for our employees, and we just don't have the ability to do that right now.
And if you don't mind, if you can back up to the previous slide, the specific action that's being asked for you to consider is that, should we explore ceasing participation? So I think this is still an opportunity for us to take a lay of the land, but we do need authority from you all to explore this. And we may get RFP backs, or maybe not be an RFP, correct me, Bridget, but we'll be able to explore the plans and see what's best for us. But this is an action item to let us take a look into it.
I guess I was up last, so I didn't raise my hand again, but I guess I'm looking at the big picture with all of the pool of people you're putting in here. You know, with KHP, you got a really big pool. You know, I guess you did look at KCTCSs and their average ages and things like that. What I'm curious about, what's the average age in KEHP? Because if we're 48 is our average, if their average is 37, well, that 37 is sure helping our insurance rates out a lot, you know, so.
Potentially. I mean, potentially. The problem is, we'll never know that, right? Like we don't have access to the bigger picture of all of the states.
We can't get that
data. We cannot. No. But beyond that, it goes vice versa. It can go either way. So it's not just strictly age related, right? So we could have the healthiest pool of employees. KCTCS's employees could be the healthiest, lowest cost in terms of claims experience, but however many K-12 school districts that are covered underneath the plan could have astronomical claims experience. We just get lumped into that. So it can go both ways, right? Like, it could be that we are bad, we are bringing things down for the whole state, or it could be that we are really good, comparatively speaking, but we just don't know that. So when Aon did this, they do look at just our population and are looking at the experience of our population, and then going out and doing all of their, I mean, like I said, the spreadsheets and all of the things and that they are able to have access to and to do in terms of actuarial analysis is mind blowing. But to be able to then project what our potential savings could look like just based upon the demographics, the claims experience of what our employees are currently, how they're utilizing the plans, put us at 9%, which was still below the national average.
Yeah, as you look in schools nowadays, I don't know how much you guys go into schools, but
Yeah.
I go to a lot of schools. They're pretty young.
Yeah.
And so generally speaking, because we're thinking big averages here, younger is normally better. You're right. You could have some conditions and things like that. But generally speaking, on a big grand scale like this, younger is always better. They don't have near the ones. So that's just kind of scary jumping in because we're at 48. That's pretty old.
Sure.
You know, I'm older than that, but still.
Yep.
Hmm,
Regent
okay.
Whitten.
So this is a big assumption on my part, but I'm just gonna ask. So, I don't mind exploring this. I'll just say that out loud. But I do have a question related to, let's say we carve out. I'm assuming then we get to have a little bit more negotiating power year to year. Right?
Right.
We get to control. I mean, maybe 1 year it's Cigna, 1 year it's Humana, 1 year we go back to Blue Cross Blue Shield, right? And that would guarantee that for us, correct?
Correct. Yes, we would negotiate our contracts.
Free market. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Regent Hamilton.
Yeah, so this is great progress. So I wonder what's the next steps to kind of drill down into this to make some decisions on how we're going to go in what direction, and what's the first step and third step for these.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, so we have presented it in much more granular detail. Will tell you, Aon came and presented to the PLT at their retreat this summer. A lot more of the data sets, data pieces, so they could see that as well. So they have been able to kind of chew on that for a little while. We're bringing it to you all to be able to explore further. We will go back to the PLT. They meet next week to get additional feedback and thoughts from them as it relates to budget impact and et cetera. And then ultimately, Dr. Quarles has, if you all give him that approval to be able to, move forward with this, he ultimately will take all of that feedback and all of the information that he has seen and questions that have been asked and answered and et cetera from Aon and their data, and we'll ultimately have to make that decision as to whether we move forward with ceasing participation. And if so, then we would have to notify the Department of Employee Insurance and proceed with that notification process of moving forward to getting out.
And to
Okay.
echo Bridget, that during the June retreat, PLT, I believe it was unanimous support towards exploring other options.
Okay. Are we ready to move to the next agenda item with Shannon, our board liaison, going to walk us through the September board meeting agenda?
I
Yeah,
think
Regent
Regent
Whitten.
Whitten has her hand raised.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, that's okay, Chair Hamilton. Thank you. Just really quick. And so this would be September, explore, moving forward. I just kind of want to be really clear about this. Would there be a time for our employees to give feedback in this process prior to us making a final decision on any of this? Once things, if we explore and we decide to kind of progress forward, would there be a comment period for our employees? Like, hey, we stay in, hey, we would rather go. Just in full transparency there with our employees.
Sure. So we don't have that slated, Regent Whitten, at that judge. I can see where the opportunity for employees, if the decision is made, it's kind of like policy decisions, right? So if the decision is made to leave, then that would be made at the executive level. But I can see the employee feedback really coming into play if there are specific like plan design type of components that are important to them, either things that we don't currently cover, aren't covered or covered at a lesser benefit than what perhaps they'd like to see. I can see where that would be a good opportunity to really gauge and get that employee feedback in that regard.
Sure, and that's where my mind was going,
Sure.
right? You know, just that idea. I mean, obviously, again, you
Mhm.
said you know, an executive level decision, but more along the lines of here's what I'd like to see. I mean, I know we've discussed this, you know, with different things and different iterations through the ROC and all of that with like cafeteria, you know, benefit
Mhm.
style plans and things like that. And this would give that opportunity again to kind of maybe look at that employee commenting period to design what they really would like to have.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that would be the perfect opportunity for that.
All righty,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. I will start per your request, Chair Hamilton, walking through the September agenda. We will be at Southeast Kentucky Community and Technical College. It will be starting at 9 a.m. We will be having a board dinner and a tour the night before, so hopefully you will be able to join us. We will start at 9, call to order, roll call. Welcome to Southeast Kentucky Community and Technical College. We will have a student spotlight. We'll then approve the minutes. Chair Hamilton will provide his report. President Quarles will then provide his report. Then we will move into Accelerate Organizational Success. You'll notice these titles change to align with the new strategic plan. Then Todd will provide the financial report. We will have an other post-employment benefit trust report. Chair Cox will provide a report on the audit committee meeting. Todd will provide an update on the external auditor RFP. Then we will have an action item to approve the House Bill 619 Comprehensive Facilities Inventory Report. Then we will have an update on job order contracting process. Then Dr. Quarles will give us a short update on his vision and goals that will need to be approved at this meeting. Then we will have an action item for the president evaluation criteria for 26-27. Then an action item on the ratification of personnel actions, action on health insurance, action on policy and bylaw revisions, and then the Board of Regents policy revision. Then we have an update on the 22 through 26 strategic plan, an update on philanthropy. Then we have an action item around naming a building at Bluegrass Community and Technical College, and then the annual report from Technology Solutions. Then we move into Accelerate Workforce Success. We will have an update on workforce and economic development. Then we will move into Accelerate Student Success. And we will hear a report from Dr. Neal on enrollment, certificate and program approvals, and program suspensions. And then the ratification of colleges candidates for credentials. We will end with the open comment period and next meeting and adjournment. Regent Whitten.
Yes. Dr. Neal, this is a question about your report, and please correct me if I'm wrong. It just always feels like it's September when we get that status of keys, which we have, you know, of course, been talking about. And I my memory could be failing me here, but I do remember saying that we were going to maybe have that quarterly report or an update at least, kind of like on the status of full-time faculty and adjuncts and all of our courses being, you know, up to keys standards. Please tell me if I'm wrong. It just always feels like September is the time that we get that.
I think Dr. Neal must have stepped off the call. I don't see him, but I will follow up on that, Regent Whitten. Can you explain what that is or what the abbreviation is?
Oh, yeah, no, sorry. It was the quality assurance measures, the keys that we had adopted. And, you know, he had been giving a report, and this kind of came out of the ROC, and those quality assurance measures. The keys are the levels by which we establish all of our courses will, you know, be at this level by this time. And I do recall, I think at some point, you know, him saying that it would be like a quarterly update. I do know that we would get it. We formerly would get a you know, a yearly update. So But I do believe it was in September. I could be wrong. I just wanted to ask that question. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll double check. He had to go to the joint council meeting.
Okay. Having said that, is there any new business the committee needs to address at this time? If not, that will conclude the business of this meeting. Just a reminder that the Board of Regents meetings will be September 10th, 2026 at the Southeast Kentucky Community and Technical College. With that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Vice Chair Stevens. Is there a second?
Regent
Fran
Whitney.
Powers, second.
Yeah. let me
Thank
go.
you. You are catching on. Second by Regent Powers. Any objection to the motion to adjourn? Motion passes by consensus. Thank you.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Good seeing
Thank
everybody.
you.